Hello and welcome to the channel. In this video, we will learn about embedded server in a Spring Boot project. And from this video onwards, we are resuming the Spring Boot journey again. You would have noticed that in the last couple of videos, I was teaching about installing different applications, but those were also necessary because we will use those in our Spring Boot projects. So that's why I was creating those videos. Now let's start our today's video on the embedded server. So we will cover following topics in this video. First of all, we will understand what is an embedded server in a Spring Boot project. Then what problem statement this has solved and how the things were working before the embedded server. So how we used to run the application when the embedded server was not there. So we will understand that as well. Then in order to use the embedded server, what exactly we need to do, we will see that also, and which embedded servers are supported by a Spring Boot project. We'll see the practical about that. What is the default server which comes with the Spring Boot project and how we can change that. Let's suppose if we do not want to use the default server, then we'll see how we can change that as well. Now let's start by understanding what is embedded server. So first let's understand what is the meaning of embedded. So as the word embedded tells, which means something which is already included. So same is the case with the embedded server also. So the server is already included in the Spring Boot project. So in case of embedded server, we neither require to download any web server externally, nor we require to deploy our Spring Boot project on that server because the server is already included in the code itself. So the previous statement which answers the second topic also, which was like what problem statement embedded server has solved and why is it so much famous currently. So the problem statement it solved is that it eliminates the requirement of downloading the external server and deploying the war file on that server. So now let me tell you in brief how we used to work previously with the external server when the embedded server was not there. So in order to work with the external web server, we used to download and set up the web server explicitly. So Tomcat is one of the web server. Let's take the example of the Tomcat here. So let's suppose we want to deploy something on Tomcat as the external web server. So we go to Tomcat's website, then download the binary file for the Tomcat server, then unzip the file and set the class path if required. Then in our application, first we used to build the application, then generate the war file and copy the war file into the web apps folder which is present inside the Tomcats folder. Now to deploy our application, we used to run command on the terminal which starts the Tomcat server. So that's how we deploy the application using the external server. So the entire procedure we had to follow each time whenever we do any code changes or whenever we want to deploy new code. Now the entire thing is not required when we are using the embedded server. So this is the benefit or this is the solution which embedded server brings with it. So I am not going to show these steps here for the external server. If you are really interested to learn, so you can watch the another video which I have already created on the channel. You'll find the link of that video in the description below. Now we will see what do we need to do in order to use the embedded Tomcat server. I'm sure that you must have watched the last video of Spring Boot series where we had created a simple Spring Boot project, and while creating the project we had included one dependency there which was the Spring Boot starter web. Let me show you in my IntelliJ IDE. So I will open that. So this was the project which we had created in that video, and if I go to the pom.xml file, so this was the dependency which we had included in that video while creating the Spring Boot project. So Spring Boot starter web. So this is all what we need to use the embedded server. Now let's see how it is working because of this particular dependency. So if we go inside this dependency, so I can go inside this dependency by clicking command and click. So you would see here this particular dependency Spring Boot starter Tomcat. So this is the main dependency which is responsible for the embedded server. So as you can see, this is starter Tomcat. So the Tomcat is the default server which Spring gives us as the default. And if I run this application by first going to this particular file, learn Spring Boot application, and if I run this application, then here you would see Tomcat started. So it means it is using the Tomcat as the default embedded server. So here also you can see the embedded. So it is using the embedded server, not the external server. Let me stop the application now. So if I go again to the file, so here if I go inside this particular dependency also, so here if I go to the dependency section, you would see that Tomcat embed core and Tomcat embed EL. This is the Tomcat embed WebSocket. So these are the dependency which is used by the starter Tomcat dependency. So if I go to the external libraries also, so here if I go and search for the Tomcat, so you can see there the Tomcat embed core, Tomcat embed EL, Tomcat embed WebSocket. So these are the dependency which are included in this library. So these are the dependencies which are responsible for the embedded Tomcat server. So now you know the default server is Tomcat server. Now let's see, if let's suppose you do not want to use the default server which is Tomcat and you want to use the any other server, then how can you change that? So currently Spring Boot supports two more servers as the embedded server. So first one is the Undertow, the second one is the Jetty. So if let's suppose you want to use the Undertow, so first of all you need to exclude this particular dependency which was the Spring Boot starter Tomcat. So I will copy this particular dependency. So I need just the group ID and artifact ID, and I will go to the pom.xml file, and here inside this dependency which was the Spring Boot starter web, because inside that only the starter Tomcat was there. So I need to exclude this particular dependency. So I will say I will start the exclusions, and inside that I will write exclusion, and I need to mention the group ID and artifact ID which I want to exclude. So I want to exclude this starter Tomcat dependency. So I will mention that. Now if let's suppose I want to use the Undertow as the embedded server, so I need to include the dependency, or I need to define that dependency. So like this, so I will define the tag for dependency, and inside the group ID I will mention this, and inside the artifact ID, so till now this will be the same, and now I will write the Undertow. Let me select this. Okay, so to refresh this I will go to the view, then tool window, and go to Maven, because this is the Maven project, and I will refresh the entire project. So all the dependencies or libraries will be refreshed again. So I will minimize this. So this has been synced, so I will minimize this also. So if I go to external libraries now, so you would see the Undertow dependency is there instead of the Tomcat dependencies. So let me rerun the application now from here. So if I see the logs now, so you would see the Undertow started. So previously the Tomcat started was there. Now it is written Undertow started because it is using the Undertow as the embedded server. So let me minimize this and stop the application. Now let me show you if you want to use the Jetty server here. So if I change this to Jetty, and if I save this, and again I will go to view, then Maven, and refresh this. I will hide this. It has been synced. Now if I run again the application, so in the Spring Boot 3 you might get this type of error, and to resolve this particular error you need to include one more dependency. Let me show you that. So this is the dependency which you need to include explicitly. So let me include this and let me save, and again I will go to view tool window, then Maven, and I will refresh the project. It has been synced. Let me again rerun the application. So I will talk about this particular dependency and the error which we got in some other video. But for now, if you are using the Jetty server in the Spring Boot 3, then you need to include this particular dependency also. Only after that it will work. So now you can see the Jetty server is started on port this. So like that you can change the embedded server also. Now to summarize, if we are using embedded server, then we don't need to deploy our application on the external server. So which eliminates the overhead of downloading the external server and creating the war file and deploying the war file into the external server and then go to the terminal and run the application. So we do not need to do anything. And by default, the Spring Boot has included the Tomcat as the default server, and which we can change to either Undertow or Jetty as per our use case. So that's all for this video. If you got to learn anything new from this video, please like the video and subscribe the channel, and stay tuned for more Spring Boot tutorials, and keep learning, keep supporting. See you in the another video.